So hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Learn with Rishi. In the previous videos, we have learned about the subqueries. In today's video, we are going to start with new concept that is CTE, that is Common Table Expression, and which is also known as with clause. So basically, what is CTE? Why do we need CTE? Difference between CTE and subquery, CTE and temporary table, how we can use CTEs in joins, in subqueries, all these things we are going to learn in today's video. So before getting started, we will just see what is the problem and why we need CTE. So let's say the question is find the customers whose total spending exceeds rupees 40,000. This is a simple problem. So how our query can be, let's say select the customer ID and we want the sum exceeding 40,000. So we can use the aggregate function sum on the column amount as a total amount from the orders grouped by the customer ID. So this particular query will give us each customer's total spending, correct? Okay. Now from this particular result or the table, we can select that particular customer whose total amount is greater than 40,000. Correct? Now this is a query for that particular problem. Now what if we add more things inside it? So this query will become something like this. Query inside a query. Then again inside that again one query, inside that again one query. This is nothing but nested subqueries. Now what is the problem with this kind of nested subqueries? They are hard to read, hard to debug, hard to maintain, and difficult. Correct? So instead of that, what is the solution? The solution is we can use CTE, that is Common Table Expression. Okay. Now what is the CTE? It is a temporary name result basically. And we can use that temporary result in same query as many number of times we want. Okay. To make it more clear, so the real life analogy can be here. Let's say here there is an expression 20 plus 10 into 5 minus 20 plus 10 into 2 plus 20 plus 10. Here you can see 20 plus 10. This particular expression is repeated 3 times. So instead of using it 3 times, we can directly write it as a equals to 20 plus 10, and we can write the result as a into 5 minus a into 2 plus a. Correct? So this is how it will become simple, readable, reusable, and easy to maintain. So basically, CTE, Common Table Expression, makes our SQL query simple and readable. Okay, now let us create a first CTE. We'll go to MySQL Workbench. Okay. So for the demonstration purpose, I have created a database CTE demo. Inside that, we have two tables, customers table and the orders table. And I have inserted some values inside it also. So in every video, whichever commands I'm executing, that particular SQL document is shared in the description box. You can go there and download it and practice. Okay, now let us start with our first query, first CTE. Basically, first we'll see what is the syntax of CTE basically. So syntax of CTE is, you can write it as with CTE name as, and inside this, you can write your query. Inside this, you can write your query basically. Okay. So this is basically the syntax of the CTE and how you can display it, select star from that CTE name. Okay. Let us write a CTE, find total spending of each customer. So we want to find the total spending of each customer. So we can create a CTE which will calculate each customer's total spending. So we can write here with customer total. Let's say I'm giving the name of the CTE as customer total as, and inside this our query. What is a query for finding the total spending of each customer? That we have already learned while learning the group by aggregations, all these things. So let's say my query is select the customer ID. And along with the customer ID, I want the sum of the amount as the total amount. Correct? From the table, orders, correct? Group by customer ID. So this is the query. This query I have already learned while learning about the aggregate functions and group by clause. So this query will return us customer ID and the total amount spent. Correct? Now this query is inside something called as with customer total as. So this is nothing but my common table expression. If I run this particular thing, execute, it will not run. Why it will not run? We need to use that particular CTE. So select star from CTE name, that is customer total. Okay. Now this query is completed and now it will run this. If I run it, I will get it. What I am going to get? Customer ID 1, 2, 3, 4, total amount of that. So this is basically acting as a temporary name result. So this is a temporary name result. Now, if I am executing it individually, it is not running because it is not storing it as a table, a separate temporary table. It is not stored as a separate temporary table, but it is used during the query when the query is executed. So this is the difference between the table or a temporary table and the CTE. We will also see this with the help of example in the further video. So this was a simple CTE that what we have created. Now how this CTE is executed by the SQL. So execution of this. So first what will happen? Select customer ID, some amount. This particular thing will execute. It will run first and then it will create a temporary result. And the temporary result will be nothing but customer ID and total amount. Correct? Now, it will be stored as a customer total, which we have given the name of the CTE as customer total. And then select start from customer total will be executed and then we'll get the answer. So I hope you have understood how this CTE works. Now, let us try to filter this data. Filter the data. Now I want customer total spending, but I only want that particular customers whose spending are above rupees 40,000. So here you can see some customers total amount is 35, 45, 13, 70,000. I want only that customer whose total amount spending is greater than 40,000. So basically here I will get 45,000, 70,000, customer ID 2 and 4. Now I want that particular customers only. So now in this case, how I can write a query? So again, I will create a same city customer total, correct? But here now I have to apply a filter. What is a filter? Where the total amount should be greater than 40,000, correct? So this is how we can apply the filter. Now, you might ask why we are writing this particular CT again. So if I run this particular query, only this much, select start from customer total, where total amount is greater than 40,000. So in this case, it will give me an error. The error is that customer total, this particular table does not exist. So basically this customer total, this is temporary set result, which is created during the execution of the query. So this is not created permanently. So we need to write this particular city while we are executing the query. So if I run this query now, then I will get the answer. I will get only that particular customer whose total amount is greater than 40,000. So I hope you understood how we make use of CTEs, correct? Now, next thing that we are going to understand is CTE with join. Okay. Now in this particular CTE, we only have customer ID and amount. Only these two columns we have. Now, what if I want the customer names also? Customer names. And we have that particular customer names in the customers table. Okay. So if I run this particular query, select start from customers, I have for each customer ID, I have a customer name, Ramesh, Amish, Anika, Rahul, and so on. Okay. So in the CTE table, or you can say the CTE common expression table, common table expression, I have the customer ID and the amount. In the customers table, I have the customer ID, customer name, and the city. So what is the common column here? Customer ID. So we can join these both tables, that is a table customer and a temporary result, that is CTE. We can join this and then we can access or we can fetch the customer name. So how the query can be? So we can write this particular query. So this is my first CTE. So CTE will remain as it is. This is CTE customer total, correct. Now we have to join this both. Select C dot customer name. What is this C dot customer name? That is a alias. And CT dot total amount from customers C and join. Join with what? Join with the customer total CTE. Join with the customer total and the table alias I am giving it as a CT. So that's why from this particular table, take the customer name and from this particular table, take the total amount. And join on which condition? Customer ID equal on both the tables. So join on which condition? On c dot customer ID equals to ct dot customer ID. So this join we have already learned in the previous video how join helps, how join works basically. So this is my table one, that is customers table, and that is a permanent table that you have stored in my database. But this particular customer total table, this is a temporary table. It is not a table basically. We can't say it is a table. It is a temporary result. It is a result set, but it is acting as a table. Okay. So we are joining this table and the temporary result on the customer ID, and we are displaying now the customer name and the total amount. So I hope the query is clear. If I execute this particular query, ctdemo.cost. Okay, I need to execute it with the CT also. So this whole thing I need to execute. Then I will get the required output. Customer name Ramesh, this is the total amount. Amit, this is the total amount, and so on. So I hope you understood how we make use of CTE and how we use join with CTE. Okay. Let us move to the next concept, that is using multiple CTEs. Can we have multiple CTEs? What do you mean by multiple CTE? So we can write it like this syntax: with CTE1 as and then query, comma CTE2 as then a query like this, and so on. Correct? So yes, we can write multiple CTs. So let us try to understand this with the help of example. Now my the query is find the customers spending above average. Above average. So in this case, we'll create two cities. First city will find the total spendings basically. Total spending of each customer. And the second CTE will be finding the average spending, correct? And we will use both these cities together to answer this query. Find the customer spending above average. So here the first city we already have the total spending of each customer. So we'll directly copy it like this. So with total customer, correct? Now we need to create a second city. So we do not need to write again with second city name as something. We need to just write it here, comma, and a second city name. So let's say my second city name is average spending as, and here will be my query. Now it comes very important part. We need to calculate the average. So basically, if you see here, if I write select start from orders, if I use the orders table, here you can see a particular customer has done many orders. So customer 1 has done 2 orders, customer 3 has done multiple orders, correct? So if I use orders table for averaging, it will sum the amount and divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It will divide it by 6. But actually, do we have to divide it by 6? No. Actually, we have to divide it by the total number of customers. That is unique customers. Here we have only 4 customers. So while writing this particular query, what we can write it here as select the average amount. Instead of amount, we can use this total amount. Okay, select average total amount as the average amount. And from the table which is temporarily created, or it is a temporary result, that is our CTE first. First CTE, that is customer total. So why we have wrote like this? Select average total amount as average amount from customer table. Why we have used this particular CTE while calculating the average? Because this particular CTE will give a temporary result, customer ID, grouping it by customer ID. So in this case, it will only result into unique customer IDs 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, it will get divided by 4 and not by 6. So this is the reason why we have used the customer total for calculating the average. Now this is my CTE1, this is my CTE2. Now I will use this both the CTEs to fetch that particular customers whose spending is greater than the average. So here I can write select star from the customer total table where the total amount is greater than the average amount. But can we write this average amount like this? No, because average amount is not present in the customer total table. It is present in the average spending, correct? So here I need to write a inside subquery That is select average amount. Correct? Select the average amount from the average spending. Average spending. So if I execute this particular query now, then I will get the result correctly. So if I execute it like this, CTE1, CTE2 and the query and run, I will get that particular customer whose total amount is greater than the average. If I use your orders table, the average will be different because it will divide it by 6. So that's why we have used like this. So I hope you understood how we use multiple CTs. So the execution flow will be here. First, customer total will be created. First, this particular CT will be created. Then average spending will be created. And then main query will be executed. Okay. Now we'll understand CTE versus subquery. Now, if I write a subquery here, subquery, let's say select star from this particular, again, inner query. So my inner query is select customer ID, comma, sum of amount as total amount. Okay. From the table orders, then group by the customer ID. Okay. And since we are using it in the from clause, we need to give name to this particular table as let's say X, where again I'm going to filter where the total amount is greater than 40,000. So this is basically a subquery, correct? Query inside a query. So first inner query will run. It will give me the result customer ID 1234 and the sum of the amount. Yes. Now this will act as a temporary table or you can say a table. Now from this table we'll select all the columns, that is nothing but a customer ID and the total amount column where the total amount is greater than 40,000. So basically filtering will apply and then it will fetch. So if I run this particular query, I will get the same, sorry. So if I run this particular query, I will get the result customer ID 2 and 4, which have a total amount greater than 40,000. So this was the subquery version. Similarly, we use the CTE version of this earlier. What we have done in the CTE version, so we have created a CTE as customer total. And then we select start from customer total where total amount is greater than 40,000. This is my CTE basically. So what is the difference between subquery and CTE? If I execute this, I will get the same result, customer ID 2 and 4. Correct? So now what is the difference between subquery and CTE? Both the queries have resulted the same. First point is readability. What do you think? Which query is readable? More readable? This is query inside a query. If you see this particular query and you have no idea of subquery, do you think you are able to catch what this query is doing? No. So this is less readable. But in CTE, if you see this particular query, you can see that this particular customer total, this particular something is doing, it is calculating the sum amount. And then this particular query using that table and it is displaying that particular columns where the total amount is greater than 40,000. So this is more readable. So in readability, CTE is more readable. Next point comes is reuse. Okay, reuse. So in subquery, we cannot reuse it, but CTE can be reused. So basically, if this in this particular query, I have reused customer total, correct? In this particular query only, if I have one other queries also, in that also I need that part of customer total. I don't need to write that particular whole query again. I can reuse it. Okay. Then again, the maintenance. Maintenance of subquery is hard, but CTE is easy for CTE. And also debugging. If there is some errors, it is hard to debug in subqueries, easy in CTE. So basically, common table expressions, they're easy to read, they're easy to maintain, easy to reuse, and easy to debug. So whenever the complexity of the query increases, we can use CTE instead of the subquery basically. Okay. Now the next part is you need to understand what is CTE versus temporary table. Okay. So now many students make confusion that when we create a CTE, it is a table and it is created and stored in the disk or memory. But it is not the case. In CTEs, it will exist only if you run the particular query. But a temporary table, it is stored in the disk or memory. First, we'll understand how we can create a temporary table. So let's say create temporary table. So there is a keyword here, temporary table. Let's say customer total as select customer ID, okay, comma the sum of amount as the total amount, okay, from the orders group by customer ID. Here it should be customer ID. Okay. So if I run this particular query, a temporary table will be created. So here you can see created temporary table. Now this particular table is stored in a disk. How we can display this result? You can write select star from this table, that is plus total, that is a temporary table. Correct? If I execute this, I will get the table customer ID total amount 1, 2, 3, 4 and like this. Okay. Now, if I run this particular command, drop table cost ID, sorry, cost total. If I use execute this, it will get drop also. So what this particular commands tell us that this particular temporary table was created and stored in the disk. And if we run the select command, it is also displaying the table. And if we use the command drop table, it is also getting drop. Okay. Now, if I write CT with customer total as select star from customer total. And inside this, there is some query. Okay. So whatever query it is there, select customer ID, comma sum amount from orders group by customer ID. So this is nothing but a CTE. If I run this, I will get the same result. But this particular customer table, it is not stored in the disk. It is not created as a temporary table. So if I run this particular command, drop table customer total, in this case, if I run this, I will get error. So what is the error? Unknown table CT demo.customer table. So this particular customer total is not created only. Okay, I wrote table customer total. If I run this, then also it will give error because this particular customer total is not created only in the main memory or disk. So there is no storage, no creation, no cleanup. I hope you understood this. So to compare with the temporary table and the CTE, so basically stored on disk, we can say temporary tables, yes, we can store it on the disk, but CTE is not stored on the disk. Then lifetime. Lifetime access. So temporary table is access session on that in that particular session. If I quit the workbench now and then again log into the workbench, and then if I write the query select start from customer temporary table, whatever temporary table I have created, then I will get the error that table does not exist. So basically temporary table exists for that particular session only, and CTE exists for that one query. CT only exists when you are executing that particular query. For the next query, you have to create another CTO. Okay. Third difference, needs drop. So you need to drop the table. Yes. So CT will require drop. No. CT will not require drop. But a temporary table will require drop. Yes. Temporary table will require the drop. Okay. Next, readability. Readability of CT is excellent than the temporary table. So this is the difference between CT and the temporary table. So now when to use CT, when to use temporary table. So whenever the intermediate result is needed once, we can use the CTE. In that particular query only I need that. Then we can use the CTE. And whenever I require the intermediate result again and again in that particular session, then we can use a temporary table. So I hope you understood about the common table expression, what is the syntax of it, how we can use it, why it is used, and then cities with join, city versus subquery, city versus temporary table. In the further videos, we will discuss about the recursive cities and window functions, and we'll also solve some complex problems related to cities. Okay. So if you find today's video interesting and helpful, do like, share, and subscribe the channel for more such videos. Thank you so much for watching. Keep learning.